Imagine growing up in a world where your future had already been decided before you could even read your first book. In colonial America, most children were expected to follow the same path as their parents. Wealth stayed within wealthy families. Education belonged to the privileged, and ordinary boys were expected to spend their lives working with their hands instead of their minds. Yet history has a curious habit of choosing its greatest dreamers from the places where no one thinks to look. Long before he became one of the most admired minds of the 18th century, Benjamin Franklin was simply another child living among crowded wooden houses and muddy streets near the busy harbor of Boston. There were no signs that this quiet boy would someday influence science, politics, literature, and diplomacy. If anyone had looked at him then, they would have seen nothing more than the son of a hard-working craftsman trying to earn an honest living. Boston was still a young colonial town, shaped more by survival than by ambition. Every morning began with the sound of church bells, hammering from nearby workshops, and sailors preparing ships for long voyages across the Atlantic Ocean. The smell of burning firewood mixed with salt carried inland by the sea breeze, while merchants displayed fresh goods brought from distant lands. Life moved at a slower pace, but every day demanded discipline, patience, and relentless work. Families rarely had the luxury of dreaming beyond their immediate needs. Children learned practical skills almost as soon as they could walk. Every pair of hands mattered because every task helped keep the household alive. Books were uncommon treasures, and formal education was a privilege that many parents simply could not afford. A knowledge existed, but reaching it often depended more on circumstance than desire. Inside one modest home lived Josiah Franklin, a man who had crossed the ocean, searching not for fortune, but for freedom. He believed that a person should be able to worship according to conscience, even if that choice required leaving everything familiar behind. The decision demanded enormous sacrifice, yet it gave his growing family something far more valuable than comfort. It gave them the opportunity to begin again in a place where tomorrow remained unwritten. To support his household, Josiah made candles and soap. It was repetitive work that required long hours beside large iron kettles filled with melted tallow. The smell settled into clothing, furniture, and even the wooden walls of the house. Few people admired candlemakers, but nearly everyone depended on their work. Every evening, when darkness covered the town, thousands of small flames reminded families that someone had quietly labored so they could see. His wife, Abiah, carried a different kind of strength. While her husband worked with fire and wax, she held together a home filled with children, responsibilities, and constant challenges. Raising such a large family required patience that often went unnoticed. Meals had to be prepared, clothes repaired, and countless small problems solved before the day was over. Despite the hardships, she created a home where kindness and curiosity were never treated as unnecessary luxuries. Among all those children was a boy whose greatest habit was asking questions. He looked at ordinary things as though they were unsolved mysteries. Why did smoke always rise toward the sky instead of falling back to the ground? Why could ships, weighing many tons, float so effortlessly across the water? Why did lightning appear without warning, filling the heavens with both beauty and fear? The adults around him rarely had complete answers, but that only encouraged him to keep searching. Without realizing it, the streets of Boston became his first classroom. Every craftsman taught him something about patience. Every sailor carried stories from distant countries. Every arriving ship brought newspapers, books, inventions, and ideas from across Europe. While other children saw barrels, ropes, and wooden docks, he imagined invisible connections between people who had never met. Somewhere beyond the horizon, he believed, there were countless discoveries still waiting for someone willing to ask another question. The boy's hunger for learning grew inside a house that had very little room for silence. People were always moving, speaking, working, or calling for one another. Younger children needed care. Older children had chores. And the smell of his father's trade followed every day like an invisible curtain. Yet in the middle of that crowded life, Benjamin discovered that the mind could create its own private room. A book, once opened, could turn noise into distance and poverty into possibility. Books were not easy to find, and they were even harder to own. A single volume could cost more than a working family wanted to spare, so every page felt precious. Benjamin read whatever came within reach, not with the casual attention of a child passing time, but with the seriousness of someone who felt that knowledge might be a way out. Stories of ancient leaders, moral struggles, and human ambition entered his imagination and quietly began shaping his inner world. He learned early that greatness did not always begin with comfort. The lives he read about were filled with exile, war, failure, discipline, and sacrifice. This mattered to him because his own life felt narrow from the outside. He was not born into a family that could promise him status. He had no estate waiting for him, no powerful name to open doors. Yet the books suggested something dangerous and beautiful. A person could build himself. For a brief moment, it seemed that formal education might carry him toward a different future. His father hoped that Benjamin might become a minister, a respected path for a bright boy in a deeply religious town. He was sent to school, where his quick mind immediately stood out. Lessons that exhausted other students seemed to awaken him. Language, memory, argument, and rhythm came alive in his hands. Teachers saw promise, and for a short time, the road ahead appeared wider. But dreams often meet the arithmetic of real life. Schooling required money, and money in the Franklin household had to answer to many needs. There were mouths to feed, clothes to mend, tools to maintain, and younger children still growing. Ambition could not erase the cost of bread. After less than a year, Benjamin was removed from school. The door did not slam loudly. It closed quietly, as many doors close for poor children, without ceremony, without applause, without anyone calling it tragedy. At 10 years old, his formal education was effectively over. From that point forward, whatever he became would have to be built outside the classroom. There would be no long years at college, no famous professors guiding him through ancient languages, no comfortable library prepared for his use. He would have to become his own teacher. For many people, such an ending would have hardened into resentment. For Benjamin, it became a beginning shaped by necessity. His father brought him into the family business, hoping work would steady him. Benjamin helped cut wicks, fill molds, tend fires, and handle the heavy, unpleasant tasks of candle making. The labor was useful, honest, and necessary, but it did not speak to him. Each day felt like a coat that did not fit. His hands worked, but his thoughts drifted toward the harbor, toward books, toward distant cities whose names sounded almost like invitations. He began dreaming of the sea. To a restless boy, ships seemed to promise freedom no workshop could offer. Sailors came and went with stories of storms, foreign ports, strange languages, and open horizons. The ocean appeared dangerous, but danger can look like liberty when ordinary life feels too small. Josiah understood the danger better than his son did. He had already lost one child to the sea, and he refused to surrender another to that uncertain blue vastness. Instead of forcing Benjamin to remain forever in a trade he disliked, Josiah began walking with him through Boston, visiting different workshops. They watched craftsmen shape wood, metal, leather, and stone into useful things. Each trade revealed a hidden intelligence. A carpenter understood balance. A mason understood pressure. A blacksmith understood heat. A shipbuilder understood curves, wind, and endurance. Benjamin watched carefully, not because he wanted every trade, but because each one taught him how human hands could solve practical problems. Those walks became another kind of education. He learned that knowledge did not only live in books, it lived in tools, muscles, habits, measurements, and mistakes repeated until they became skill. Every craft contained a philosophy. Every finished object carried the memory of trial and correction. Years later, when he invented devices meant to improve everyday life, he would not think like a distant scholar. He would think like a man who had watched working people struggle with ordinary difficulties. Still, no workshop captured his heart the way printed words did. Then his older brother James returned to Boston with a trade that seemed to combine labor and ideas. Printing was not gentle work. It required strength, precision, patience, and long hours on one's feet. But it also placed a worker near language every day. Pamphlets, sermons, essays, announcements, poems, and arguments passed through the printer's hands before they reached the public mind. To Benjamin, the print shop must have felt like a doorway opening. Here was a place where thought became physical. Words were not merely spoken and lost. They were arranged, pressed into paper, multiplied, and sent into the world. A poor man's idea, if printed clearly enough, could travel farther than his body ever might. In a society built on rank and reputation, the printing press contained a quiet revolution. It allowed ordinary people to enter conversations once reserved for the powerful. At 12 years old, Benjamin became apprenticed to James. The agreement bound him for many years, and in legal terms it gave his brother great authority over him. Yet the work itself excited him. He learned to set type letter by letter, placing each small piece backward so that it would appear correctly on the printed page. The task demanded patience that bordered on meditation. One mistake could disturb an entire line. One careless hand could ruin hours of preparation. The days were long, but the shop placed him near more reading material than he had ever known. Whenever he could borrow a book, he treated it like borrowed fire. He read late into the night, often returning volumes before their owners noticed how long they had been gone. He did not read passively. He studied how writers shaped sentences, built arguments, delayed answers, and guided emotion. Writing, he slowly realized, was not magic, it was craft. He began training himself with unusual discipline. When he admired an essay, he would read it carefully, set it aside, and later try to recreate its meaning in his own words. Then he compared his version with the original, not to punish himself, but to discover what he lacked. Where was his phrasing weak? Where did the argument lose strength? Where did rhythm fail? Without a teacher standing over him, he built a private school out of imitation, correction, and persistence. This habit would become one of the hidden engines of his life. Many people wait for someone to give them permission to improve. Benjamin did not. He treated every weakness as something that could be studied. Vocabulary could be expanded. Logic could be sharpened. Style could be refined. Even conversation could be practiced. His education did not follow the official road, but perhaps that made it more powerful. No one handed it to him, so he never took it for granted. The relationship with James, however, grew increasingly difficult. James was older, legally his master, and eager to maintain control. Benjamin was younger, quicker, and increasingly aware of his own ability. Between brothers, affection can easily become rivalry when authority stands in the middle. The print shop gave Benjamin a world of ideas, but it also placed him under daily command. The more his mind expanded, the smaller his position began to feel. When James started a newspaper, Benjamin saw a new possibility. The paper did more than repeat official news. It carried opinion, humor, criticism, and sharp observations about public life. For a young apprentice who had spent nights teaching himself how to write, this was irresistible. He wanted to contribute. He wanted his words to be judged not by his age or status, but by their force. James did not welcome the idea. To him, Benjamin was still a boy. So Benjamin found another way. Instead of asking for permission, he wrote under a false identity and secretly delivered the pieces to the shop. The voice he created was witty, observant, and confident enough to mock social pretension without sounding cruel. Readers responded. People discussed the anonymous writer with admiration, wondering who possessed such humor and insight. No one imagined that the author was the teenage apprentice working quietly in the same room. When the truth came out, admiration did not bring peace. James felt embarrassed, perhaps even threatened. The younger brother had proved himself before the public, without permission from the elder. What should have been a moment of pride became a wound. Tension hardened. Punishment became harsher. Benjamin learned one of the painful lessons of youth. Talent does not always free you immediately. Sometimes it first makes the walls around you more visible. By 17, he could no longer accept those walls. Remaining in Boston meant years of obedience under a brother who resented him. Leaving meant danger, illegality, uncertainty, and shame. An apprentice who ran away could be treated as a fugitive from obligation. Respectable employers might refuse him. Family relationships could break permanently. Yet there are moments when staying feels more dangerous to the soul than leaving feels to the body. So he made the decision that would divide his life into before and after. He sold some of his books, gathered what little money he could, and prepared to leave the only city he had ever known. There was no grand farewell, no guarantee, no heroic music rising over the harbor. Only a young man stepping into uncertainty with a few coins, a restless mind, and the stubborn belief that somewhere beyond Boston, his life might become larger than the role assigned to him. The journey away from Boston did not begin with confidence. It began with uncertainty, wrapped in silence. Every mile carried Benjamin farther from the streets he knew, and closer to a future that existed only in his imagination. He had no powerful patron waiting to welcome him, no secure position promised at the end of the road, and no certainty that he had made the right decision. All he possessed was a belief that a different life might be possible if he was willing to risk everything familiar. Travel in colonial America was slow, uncomfortable, and often dangerous. Roads disappeared into forests, weather changed without warning, and strangers could become either unexpected friends or hidden threats. Inns were simple, food was inconsistent, and money disappeared faster than most travelers expected. For a young man with only a small amount in his pocket, every meal required careful thought. Every coin spent today meant one less chance tomorrow. Necessity quickly became his most demanding teacher. After a series of difficult journeys by boat and on foot, he finally reached Philadelphia. The city looked different from Boston in ways that were difficult to explain but impossible to ignore. It felt younger, more open, and less bound by old traditions. Merchants from different backgrounds filled the streets, ships crowded the waterfront, and new opportunities seemed to appear beside every warehouse and workshop. It was not a city without hardship, but it was a city where strangers could still imagine building a future. His arrival, however, was far from glorious. Years later, Benjamin himself would remember walking through the streets with tired eyes, worn clothes, and very little money left. Hungry after days of travel, he bought several large loaves of bread because he did not know the local prices or customs. Unable to eat them all, he tucked one loaf beneath each arm while chewing another as he wandered through unfamiliar neighborhoods. It was an awkward sight, almost comical, and certainly not the entrance anyone would expect from a man destined for greatness. People passed him without a second glance. No crowd gathered to welcome the young traveler. No one recognized his intelligence. No one predicted his future. He was simply another anonymous face among hundreds searching for work. History often remembers remarkable lives from the summit, but it rarely lingers on these quiet beginnings when success still looked impossible. Perhaps that is why they matter so much. They remind us that greatness almost always begins in complete obscurity. While walking through the city with bread under his arms, he unknowingly passed a young woman standing near the doorway of her family home. Her name was Deborah Red. She noticed the tired stranger with curious amusement, never imagining that the awkward traveler would one day become one of the most respected men in America, or that their lives would eventually become deeply connected. Some of history's most important moments arrive without announcing themselves. They pass quietly, looking no different from any ordinary afternoon. Finding employment became his immediate priority. Fortune favored him just enough. Philadelphia needed skilled printers, and despite his youth, Benjamin already possessed valuable experience from the years spent in his brother's print shop. He soon found work, earning the respect of fellow craftsmen through discipline, speed, and an eagerness to improve every task placed before him. Employers noticed that he rarely wasted time. Even after long hours of labor, he still searched for books, conversations, and ideas that could expand his understanding. Those who worked beside him began to recognize an unusual quality. Benjamin did not separate physical labor from intellectual growth. While setting type or operating heavy presses, he observed how businesses functioned, how customers made decisions, and how successful people earned trust. Every ordinary day became another lesson. Instead of asking only how to finish his work, he quietly asked why certain methods succeeded while others failed. Curiosity remained his constant companion, shaping even the smallest experiences into opportunities for learning. His reputation slowly reached the attention of Sir William Keith, the governor of Pennsylvania. Unlike many officials of the time, Keith enjoyed encouraging talented young men. After meeting Benjamin, he became convinced that the ambitious printer possessed extraordinary promise. He urged him to establish his own printing business, insisting that someone with such ability should not spend his life working for others. For a young man still searching for direction, those words sounded like the confirmation he had been waiting to hear. There was only one problem. Starting a printing business required equipment, paper, type, and financial support that Benjamin simply did not have. Governor Keith confidently assured him that assistance would be arranged. He even encouraged Benjamin to travel to London, where the necessary supplies could supposedly be purchased with letters of recommendation and financial backing prepared by the governor himself. The proposal seemed generous, almost unbelievable. It promised not only opportunity, but recognition from one of the colony's most influential leaders. Benjamin believed him. Perhaps every young dreamer carries a quiet desire to trust those who speak with confidence. Experience had not yet taught him that impressive promises and genuine commitment are not always the same thing. Filled with optimism, he prepared for the voyage across the Atlantic Ocean. Leaving Philadelphia so soon was not part of his original plan, but London represented the center of the English printing world. If everything happened as promised, he would return with the knowledge and equipment needed to establish an independent future. The crossing itself demanded patience and endurance. Weeks passed, surrounded by restless waves, changing winds, and endless horizons. Life aboard a ship left plenty of time for reflection. Each sunrise looked almost identical to the one before it, yet every day carried the vessel farther from home. The ocean has a peculiar way of stripping life down to its essentials. There are no distractions beyond the sky, the water, and one's own thoughts. For Benjamin, the voyage became another chapter in the education that no school could have offered. When the ship finally reached London, reality arrived with brutal simplicity. The promised letters were nowhere to be found. The financial support did not exist. Governor Keith had spoken generously, but he had failed to act. Almost overnight, Benjamin discovered that he had crossed an entire ocean based on assurances that meant nothing. He was now alone in one of the largest cities in the world, with little money, no influential connections, and no business waiting for him. For many people, such a betrayal would have produced lasting bitterness. Benjamin certainly felt disappointment, but he refused to let humiliation become his identity. Instead of wasting precious energy blaming another man, he asked the only question that truly mattered: what could be done now? That habit would define him throughout his life. When circumstances collapsed, he did not remain trapped inside the injustice. He searched for the next practical step. He found work in London as a printer, where the industry operated on a scale unlike anything he had seen in America. Enormous workshops employed skilled craftsmen who produced books, newspapers, pamphlets, and official documents for an expanding empire. The pace was faster, the competition sharper, and the standards higher. Surrounded by experienced workers, Benjamin absorbed new techniques while quietly improving his own abilities. A disappointment had unexpectedly delivered him into another remarkable classroom. London itself fascinated him. Crowded streets overflowed with merchants, philosophers, laborers, scientists, politicians, and artists. Coffee houses buzzed with conversations about trade, religion, invention, and government. Ideas traveled through the city almost as quickly as people did. Unlike many places where social rank determined every conversation, London offered countless opportunities for curious minds willing to listen. Benjamin spent as much time observing human nature as he did mastering his profession. He noticed something that stayed with him for the rest of his life. Knowledge alone did not separate successful people from unsuccessful ones. Habits did. Those who earned lasting respect tended to value discipline over excitement, preparation over impulse, and steady improvement over dramatic gestures. Achievement was rarely the product of a single brilliant moment. More often, it emerged from thousands of ordinary decisions, repeated with consistency. This realization quietly reshaped the way he viewed ambition. During his evenings, he continued reading widely, expanding his understanding far beyond printing. Philosophy, science, history, economics, and literature all became part of the same lifelong conversation, unfolding inside his mind. He did not collect information merely to impress others. He searched for connections. How did governments rise and fall? Why did some inventions transform society while others disappeared? What habits allowed ordinary individuals to accomplish extraordinary things over many decades? Without realizing it, the lonely young printer who had arrived in London carrying disappointment was becoming someone very different. Hardship had stripped away youthful illusions, but it had replaced them with something stronger. Confidence built on praise can disappear overnight. Confidence built on experience grows quietly, surviving failure because it has already learned that failure is not the end of the story. Benjamin was no longer chasing opportunity with blind optimism. He was learning how to create opportunity with patience, discipline, and relentless curiosity. By the time thoughts of returning to America began taking shape, he carried far more than improved technical skills. He possessed a broader understanding of people, a deeper respect for careful preparation, and a growing conviction that lasting success belonged not to those who waited for perfect conditions, but to those who continued moving forward, even after discovering that the world rarely kept its promises. When Benjamin finally returned to Philadelphia, he did not come back as the same restless teenager who had left America searching for opportunity. The voyage across the ocean had changed something far deeper than his profession. He had learned that intelligence alone could not guarantee success, that promises from powerful people could disappear without warning, and that self-reliance was often more dependable than good fortune. These lessons could not be found in books. They had been earned through disappointment, long hours of labor, and the quiet discipline of beginning again. Philadelphia welcomed him with familiar streets, busy markets, and the steady rhythm of a growing colonial city. Merchants bargained over imported goods, wagons rattled across uneven roads, and ships continued to arrive, carrying cargo from distant ports. Yet this time, he walked through the city with different eyes. Instead of seeing only buildings and businesses, he saw possibilities hidden behind everyday routines. Every successful shop represented years of persistence. Every respected craftsman had once been an unknown apprentice, struggling to prove his worth. Not long after his return, he accepted work with a merchant named Thomas Denham, whose practical wisdom left a lasting impression on the young printer. Denham believed that honesty was not merely a moral virtue, but also good business. Customers returned to people they trusted, partners invested in those whose word carried weight, and reputations were built slowly through countless ordinary decisions. Although Benjamin's time working with him would not last long, the experience strengthened his growing belief that character and competence belong together. Fate, however, rarely follows a straight line. Denham unexpectedly passed away after a short illness, leaving Benjamin once again without stable employment. Many people would have viewed another setback as proof that life refused to cooperate with their ambitions. Benjamin reacted differently. Each disappointment seemed to sharpen rather than weaken his determination. Instead of asking why misfortune kept appearing, he focused on what remained within his control. His skills were improving. His reputation was growing. His curiosity had never been stronger. He returned to printing, accepting work that allowed him to refine both his craft and his understanding of business. Day after day, he handled ink-stained pages, adjusted heavy presses, organized type, and corrected mistakes before they reached the public. The work demanded precision because even a single misplaced letter could change the meaning of an entire sentence. Over time, he developed an appreciation for careful attention that extended beyond the print shop. He began to believe that small details often determined large outcomes. During these years, another habit quietly took root. Benjamin became fascinated by the idea of improving himself through deliberate routines rather than sudden inspiration. He observed successful people with almost scientific curiosity. Why were some individuals respected wherever they went, while others struggled despite possessing similar talents? Why did certain businesses continue growing, while others slowly disappeared? Instead of accepting success as a mystery, he treated it like a pattern waiting to be understood. He filled notebooks with observations, copied memorable passages from books, and experimented with new methods of organizing his time. If he noticed a weakness in himself, he searched for practical ways to strengthen it. If he admired someone else's skill, he studied the habits behind that skill, instead of simply praising the result. This approach transformed everyday life into a continuous experiment. Each conversation became a lesson. Each mistake became useful evidence rather than a reason for embarrassment. His evenings were often spent among people who shared the same hunger for knowledge. Philadelphia was attracting craftsmen, merchants, surveyors, teachers, and thinkers who believed that ideas could improve both individual lives and society itself. Conversations stretched late into the night, moving effortlessly between philosophy, science, politics, economics, and practical invention. There was no rigid separation between intellectual curiosity and ordinary work. A printer could discuss astronomy, while a merchant debated ethics, and a farmer questioned natural philosophy. Out of these conversations emerged one of the most meaningful friendships of his early adult life. He found companions who challenged his opinions instead of simply agreeing with them. Together, they questioned accepted beliefs, exchanged books, examined new discoveries arriving from Europe, and encouraged one another to think more carefully. Disagreement was welcomed because it forced every participant to defend ideas with reason rather than emotion. Benjamin treasured these discussions because they sharpened both his mind and his character. Eventually, these gatherings developed into a small discussion society known simply as the Junto. Its members came from different occupations, yet they shared a common belief that learning should never end when formal schooling stopped. Each meeting explored practical questions. How could the city become cleaner? How might business become more honest? What habits created trustworthy citizens? What inventions could reduce unnecessary labor? They were not meeting to impress one another. They genuinely hoped that thoughtful conversation could improve everyday life. The Junto revealed something essential about Benjamin's personality. He never viewed knowledge as something to be locked away inside private collections or reserved for scholars alone. Ideas became valuable only when they solved real problems faced by ordinary people. If a better street could be built, if a safer fireplace could warm a family, if clearer information could help citizens make wiser decisions, then learning had fulfilled its highest purpose. Knowledge, in his view, existed to serve people rather than elevate egos. As his confidence continued growing, so did his ambitions. Working for someone else no longer satisfied him. Years of observation had taught him how successful print shops operated, how customers were earned, and how careful financial decisions could strengthen a business. He believed the time had finally come to build something of his own. Unlike the hopeful teenager who had once trusted empty promises, the man standing there now relied on preparation rather than optimism. With the support of trusted partners, Benjamin established his own printing business. The beginning was modest, equipment was expensive, competition already existed, and every customer had to be earned through reliability instead of reputation. There were mornings when orders arrived slowly, and evenings when exhaustion settled heavily over every muscle. Yet he welcomed the burden because the responsibility belonged entirely to him. Every success reflected his own effort, and every mistake became his own lesson to correct. His approach to business soon distinguished him from many competitors. He delivered work on time whenever possible, maintained consistent quality, and treated customers with respect regardless of their social standing. He understood that trust accumulated gradually through repeated experience. A satisfied customer often returned, bringing friends and neighbors along. Reputation spread through conversations across markets, churches, workshops, and family tables. Without spending extravagant sums on promotion, his name slowly became associated with reliability. The print shop itself became much more than a place where ink met paper. It became a crossroads where information flowed through the colony. Newspapers, official notices, essays, advertisements, scientific observations, and public debates all passed across his printing press before reaching thousands of readers. Standing among stacks of fresh pages, Benjamin realized that printing was not simply a business. It was a bridge connecting ideas with ordinary people. Every sheet leaving the press possessed the quiet power to influence conversations far beyond the walls of his workshop. As orders increased, prosperity arrived little by little rather than all at once. There was no dramatic morning when fortune suddenly appeared. Instead, success accumulated through countless ordinary days, marked by discipline, careful planning, and patient improvement. Looking back, it would have been easy to imagine that everything had unfolded naturally, but each achievement rested upon invisible years of uncertainty that few people would ever see. Those difficult years had shaped not only his career, but also the philosophy that would guide the rest of his remarkable life. Owning a successful print shop gave Benjamin something he had never truly possessed before. It gave him stability. For the first time in his life, he no longer woke each morning wondering whether opportunity would disappear before sunset. Yet financial security did not make him complacent. If anything, it expanded his curiosity. Once the struggle for survival became less urgent, his attention turned toward a larger question. If a person could improve his own life through knowledge, could an entire community be improved the same way? Instead of keeping his success to himself, he began looking outward. He noticed that many practical problems surrounding him were accepted simply because they had existed for so long. Streets became dangerously dark after sunset. Fires spread quickly through crowded neighborhoods. Books remained beyond the reach of ordinary workers. Public discussion often depended on rumor rather than reliable information. Most people adapted to these inconveniences without imagining that they could be solved. Benjamin viewed them differently. Every inconvenience looked like an unanswered question, waiting for someone willing to think. His newspaper soon became one of the most respected publications in the colonies. Readers trusted it because it offered more than announcements and official reports. It encouraged conversation. People encountered new ideas, thoughtful essays, practical advice, and debates about everyday concerns. Benjamin understood that information possessed extraordinary power. A society where ordinary citizens could exchange ideas openly would always be stronger than one built upon silence. Every edition leaving his press carried more than ink on paper. It carried the possibility of changing how people thought. Among his many projects, one publication would become especially famous. Each year he released a simple annual volume filled with calendars, weather predictions, household advice, observations about farming, humorous stories, and short reflections on work and character. It reached families who might never purchase expensive books, placing useful knowledge into homes across the colonies. Readers appreciated that its wisdom never sounded distant or arrogant. It spoke the language of ordinary people because it had been written by someone who had once lived exactly as they did. Many of the sayings collected in those pages became widely remembered because they reflected practical experience rather than abstract philosophy. They reminded readers that time, honesty, preparation, and steady effort often mattered more than talent alone. Benjamin never claimed that life was easy or perfectly fair. Instead, he suggested that small habits repeated faithfully could slowly reshape an ordinary future. These ideas spread from family tables to workshops, from merchants to farmers, until they became part of everyday conversation throughout the colonies. Yet, despite his growing reputation as a writer and publisher, another passion quietly occupied his evenings. Whenever work allowed, he surrounded himself with books exploring mathematics, natural philosophy, electricity, weather, navigation, and mechanics. Unlike many scholars who studied knowledge for prestige, Benjamin approached science with the curiosity of a craftsman. He wanted to understand how nature actually worked. Every unanswered question felt like an invitation rather than an obstacle. The universe seemed less like a collection of mysteries and more like a conversation patiently waiting to be understood. One evening, while observing a violent thunderstorm rolling across the sky, he found himself captivated by a question that frightened many others. Lightning had always inspired fear. People viewed it as unpredictable, destructive, and beyond human understanding. Churches interpreted it in different ways, while ordinary families simply hoped it would pass without setting their homes on fire. Benjamin watched those brilliant flashes with different eyes. Instead of asking how to escape them, he wondered what they truly were. Could lightning obey the same natural laws as the tiny sparks produced when certain materials rubbed together? Was the terrifying force splitting the sky simply a greater version of something already observed inside laboratories? At first, the idea sounded almost impossible. Many educated people dismissed such speculation as little more than imagination. But Benjamin had learned not to abandon a question simply because the answer seemed difficult to reach. He began performing careful experiments using glass tubes, metal objects, silk, and other materials capable of producing static electricity. Friends gathered to observe these demonstrations, fascinated by sparks that jumped between objects or caused lightweight materials to move without being touched. What seemed like entertainment to some became serious investigation for Benjamin. Every experiment produced another clue. Every unexpected result inspired another question. Failure did not discourage him because each mistake eliminated one incorrect path. His workshop gradually transformed into a place where practical craftsmanship and scientific curiosity existed side by side. Printing equipment occupied one corner, while experimental devices appeared in another. Visitors often found him discussing politics during 1 hour and testing electrical phenomena the next. To Benjamin, these interests were never separate. Both required careful observation, logical reasoning, and the courage to question accepted assumptions. The same habits that built a successful business also guided his scientific thinking. As his experiments continued, he began sharing observations with scholars in Europe through letters. Despite having received almost no formal education, he communicated with some of the leading scientific minds of his time as an equal. They recognized something remarkable in his work. He was not repeating old theories. He was producing original observations, supported by careful evidence. Respect slowly crossed the Atlantic Ocean, carried not by noble titles or university degrees but by the strength of his ideas. Still, one question remained unanswered. If lightning truly consisted of electricity, how could that connection be demonstrated beyond doubt? Many theories sounded convincing until tested against reality. Benjamin knew that speculation alone would never persuade careful thinkers. To evidence would be required. Somehow nature itself would have to provide the answer. He spent months considering different possibilities. Towers were too scarce. Church steeples were difficult to access. Waiting for the perfect opportunity might take years. Eventually, a far simpler idea emerged. Instead of bringing scientific equipment toward the clouds, perhaps something lightweight could be carried upward by the wind itself. The thought was elegant because it relied upon ordinary materials rather than expensive instruments. Great discoveries, he believed, did not always require complicated tools. Sometimes they required only a different way of looking at familiar objects. The famous experiment that followed would eventually become one of the most recognizable moments in scientific history. Although later, generations often misunderstood exactly what happened. Contrary to popular imagination, Benjamin did not recklessly invite a lightning bolt to strike him directly. Such an event would almost certainly have been fatal. His purpose was far more careful. He sought evidence that storm clouds carried electrical charge, not a dramatic confrontation with nature itself. During a storm, the simple kite rose into the darkening sky, while a key attached to the wet string gradually accumulated electrical charge. When tiny sparks appeared under controlled conditions, Benjamin recognized that the evidence supported his long-held suspicion. Lightning and electricity belonged to the same natural phenomenon. The discovery represented much more than scientific curiosity. Once electricity inside storms could be understood, perhaps buildings and lives could also be protected. From that insight came one of his most practical inventions, the lightning rod. Its purpose was beautifully simple. Instead of allowing lightning to strike buildings unpredictably, a metal rod provided a safer path for electrical energy to travel harmlessly into the ground. Churches, homes, warehouses, and public buildings gradually adopted the invention. Countless fires were prevented, although no one could ever calculate exactly how many disasters never occurred because of those quiet metal rods standing above rooftops. What made the invention especially remarkable was Benjamin's decision not to seek personal profit from it. He believed that discoveries capable of protecting human life should remain available to everyone. Just as previous generations had benefited from knowledge shared freely by others, he felt a responsibility to contribute his own work without demanding exclusive reward. Wealth could certainly improve one person's circumstances, but useful ideas, once shared, could improve an entire society. His reputation spread rapidly throughout Europe and the American colonies. Universities that would never have admitted the young candlemaker's son now honored him for achievements produced almost entirely through self-education. Distinguished scientists praised his experiments. Philosophers quoted his observations. Rulers expressed admiration for his practical genius. Yet those who knew him personally often noticed that success had changed surprisingly little about his daily habits. Curiosity remained stronger than pride. Work remained more satisfying than applause. Perhaps that was the quiet secret behind everything. He never viewed learning as something to complete. Every answer opened another question. Every discovery revealed another mystery, hidden just beyond the edge of understanding. While others celebrated what he had already achieved, Benjamin continued looking toward the horizon, convinced that nature still held countless truths, waiting patiently for anyone willing to observe carefully enough. While Benjamin's reputation as a scientist continued to grow, his attention never remained fixed on a single achievement for very long. Once a problem had been understood, his mind naturally drifted toward the next unanswered question. He believed that knowledge carried a responsibility. If an idea could improve everyday life, it deserved to leave the laboratory and become part of the ordinary world. Discovery, in his eyes, reached its highest purpose only when it served people who would never know the name of the person who created it. Walking through Philadelphia each morning, he noticed details that most citizens had learned to ignore. Narrow streets became nearly invisible after sunset. Travelers stumbled through darkness. Merchants worried about theft, and families hurried home before night completely settled over the city. Poor lighting was accepted as an unavoidable part of urban life. Benjamin wondered why. If people had already found ways to improve homes, businesses, and communication, why should public streets remain trapped in old habits simply because no one questioned them? Instead of complaining about the condition of the city, he proposed practical improvements: better street lighting, cleaner roads, and more organized public services were not grand political ideas designed to impress philosophers. They were simple solutions intended to make ordinary life safer and more comfortable. To Benjamin, civilization was measured less by magnificent buildings than by the quality of everyday living. A society revealed its true character through the small problems it chose to solve. He also became increasingly concerned about the danger of fire. Colonial cities were built largely from wood, and crowded neighborhoods allowed flames to spread with terrifying speed. One careless accident could destroy entire blocks before sunrise. After observing several devastating fires, he helped organize one of the first volunteer fire companies in Philadelphia. Instead of waiting helplessly for disaster, neighbors prepared themselves to protect one another. The idea reflected something he deeply believed. Communities became stronger when ordinary citizens accepted shared responsibility. His interest in public safety naturally expanded into other areas. Medical care remained limited, and many people lacked access to proper treatment during illness. Hospitals were often viewed with suspicion or considered unnecessary luxuries. Benjamin supported efforts to establish institutions where the sick could receive organized care, regardless of wealth or social standing. He understood that healthy communities required more than thriving businesses. They also required compassion, expressed through practical action rather than kind words alone. Another concern stayed with him for years. Books remained expensive, and many working people had little opportunity to continue learning after childhood. He remembered his own frustration as a young reader searching desperately for volumes he could not afford. Instead of accepting that limitation as permanent, he helped create one of America's earliest subscription libraries. Members contributed modest amounts of money so that books could be purchased collectively and shared among everyone. Knowledge no longer belonged only to those able to build private collections. The library represented far more than shelves filled with printed pages. It reflected a revolutionary belief that education should continue throughout adulthood. Benjamin never accepted the idea that learning ended when formal schooling stopped. Every stage of life offered new questions, new experiences, and new opportunities to grow wiser. By making books more accessible, he hoped countless ordinary people would discover the same excitement that had transformed his own childhood curiosity into a lifelong pursuit. His growing influence did not come from dramatic speeches or displays of authority. People trusted him because they repeatedly watched him identify practical problems and patiently work toward realistic solutions. Whether discussing libraries, hospitals, roads, or public safety, he rarely asked what would make him famous. He asked what would make daily life better. That simple difference shaped nearly everything he accomplished. Fame often follows those who stop chasing it and begin serving something larger than themselves. Around this time, another challenge began quietly reshaping the relationship between the American colonies and Great Britain. For many years, colonists had considered themselves loyal subjects of the British Crown. They spoke the same language, shared many traditions, and celebrated common victories. Yet, beneath the surface, tensions slowly increased. Taxes, trade restrictions, and political disagreements created growing frustration among people who believed they deserved greater influence over decisions affecting their own lives. Benjamin watched these developments with unusual perspective. Unlike many passionate voices on either side, he understood both America and England through personal experience. He admired British culture, respected many of its institutions, and valued the education he had gained while living in London. At the same time, he recognized the growing confidence developing inside the colonies. America was no longer merely a distant extension of Europe. It was becoming a society with its own identity, ambitions, and expectations. Rather than rushing toward confrontation, Benjamin initially hoped reconciliation remained possible. He believed reasonable discussion could still preserve peace if both sides demonstrated enough wisdom. Years of publishing newspapers had taught him that conflict often grew louder when people stopped listening to one another. Diplomacy, patience, and careful negotiation seemed preferable to violence whose consequences no one could fully predict. His reputation as both a respected thinker and a skilled communicator eventually led colonial leaders to seek his assistance. They recognized that few men possessed his combination of intelligence, practical judgment, international experience, and calm temperament. Before long, Benjamin found himself carrying responsibilities extending far beyond printing presses and scientific experiments. Letters, meetings, negotiations, and public service gradually occupied more of his time, drawing him toward the center of events that would shape the future of an entire continent. Travel once again became part of his life, though now the purpose had changed. Years earlier, he had crossed the ocean, searching for opportunity. Now, he crossed it, carrying the concerns of millions of colonists whose voices deserved representation. The difference was remarkable. The uncertain young printer, who had once arrived in London with empty promises, now returned as one of the most respected figures in the British Empire. Ministers, scholars, and influential leaders welcomed conversations with the self-educated man whose reputation had spread across continents. Yet admiration could not erase political reality. As debates between Britain and the colonies intensified, Benjamin discovered that logical arguments alone could not always overcome fear, pride, or entrenched interests. Meetings often ended without meaningful progress. Proposals that appeared reasonable encountered resistance for reasons extending far beyond reason itself. Slowly, painfully, he realized that the distance separating the two sides was becoming wider than the Atlantic Ocean that connected them. These years tested him in ways scientific experiments never had. Electricity followed natural laws. Politics followed human emotions. Facts could persuade some people, but ambition, misunderstanding, and wounded pride often proved more powerful than evidence. Benjamin learned to remain patient, even when conversations became frustrating. Anger rarely produced better decisions. Careful listening often revealed possibilities hidden beneath disagreement. Although compromise grew increasingly difficult, he refused to abandon civility. Privately, however, his optimism began to fade. Each failed negotiation convinced him that peaceful resolution was slipping further beyond reach. He had spent years believing that thoughtful dialogue could preserve unity. Yet events continued moving toward division. Watching that process unfold must have been deeply painful. He loved many aspects of British culture, but he also believed that people should not surrender their rights simply because challenging authority carried great risk. Without fully realizing it, Benjamin was approaching the most significant turning point of his life. The inventor, writer, scientist, and businessman who had spent decades improving communities would soon be asked to help create an entirely new nation. Every lesson gathered since childhood now seemed to converge. The discipline learned in his father's workshop, the curiosity awakened by borrowed books, the resilience forged through disappointment in London, the practical thinking developed through business, and the habit of solving ordinary problems would all become preparation for challenges, unlike anything he had previously imagined. History often remembers famous moments as though they appear suddenly, but they rarely do. They grow quietly through countless invisible years. Long before Benjamin Franklin helped shape the birth of the United States, he had already spent a lifetime learning how to observe carefully, think independently, earn trust, and place the common good above personal ambition. The greatest chapter of his story was still waiting just beyond the horizon, but every ordinary day that came before had already been writing its opening lines. By the time open conflict between Britain and the American colonies became unavoidable, Benjamin Franklin was no longer simply a respected printer or an admired scientist. He had become something much more difficult to define. People trusted his judgment because they knew it had been shaped by experience rather than ambition. He had failed, recovered, questioned, experimented, negotiated, and listened. Every chapter of his life had prepared him for a moment that none of the founders could fully predict. For many years he had believed that the growing disagreements between the colonies and the British government could still be resolved through patience and reason. He crossed the Atlantic Ocean again and again, carrying petitions, proposals, and hopes that compromise remained possible. He spoke with ministers, members of parliament, merchants, and influential voices across London. Each conversation was another attempt to preserve a relationship that had lasted for generations. Yet every meeting seemed to reveal the same uncomfortable truth. The two sides no longer viewed the world through the same eyes. Many British officials still regarded the colonies as distant possessions whose primary purpose was to strengthen the empire. From their perspective, Parliament possessed every right to make decisions on behalf of territories across the ocean. Many colonists, however, had begun to think differently. They believed that people who carried the burden of taxes and laws should also possess the right to shape them. What had once been a disagreement over policy slowly transformed into a disagreement about the meaning of liberty itself. Benjamin stood between these two worlds. He understood England because he had lived there, worked there, and earned friendships that lasted many years. He understood America because it had shaped every part of his adult life. Perhaps that position made his disappointment even deeper. He watched misunderstanding grow on both sides, until conversations that once seemed difficult became almost impossible. Every rejected proposal felt like another bridge collapsing behind him. One event changed him more than any speech ever could. While he was still in London, government officials publicly humiliated him during a heated hearing before the Privy Council. Accusations were thrown at him with little respect, and many observers expected him to defend himself with anger. Instead, he remained almost completely silent. Those who watched later remembered his calm expression, but inside, something had shifted forever. Humiliation sometimes destroys conviction. In other cases, it removes the final illusion that compromise remains within reach. When he eventually returned to America, friends noticed a quieter determination in him. The man who had once devoted years to preserving harmony now accepted that history had chosen another path. This was not the enthusiasm of someone eager for war. It was the reluctant acceptance of someone who believed every peaceful alternative had already been exhausted. Some decisions are not made because they promise victory. They are made because every other road has slowly disappeared. As delegates from different colonies gathered to discuss the future, Benjamin entered the room as one of the oldest participants. Many of the men around him were decades younger, filled with energy, confidence, and bold ideas. Age, however, had given him something they could not yet possess: perspective. He had witnessed the rise and fall of expectations, the danger of pride, and the value of patience. When debates became emotional, his steady presence often reminded others that great decisions required calm minds more than loud voices. The conversations were rarely simple. Each colony carried different priorities, different economies, and different fears. Some delegates worried about military defeat. Others feared economic collapse. Many hesitated to abandon ties that had connected them to Britain for generations. Independence sounded inspiring in speeches, but reality demanded unimaginable sacrifice. No one knew whether success or disaster waited beyond the next year. Uncertainty surrounded every discussion like an invisible storm cloud. Throughout these debates, Benjamin rarely relied on dramatic rhetoric. Instead, he encouraged practical thinking. He understood that lasting unity could not be built upon excitement alone. It required compromise, mutual respect, and a willingness to place shared goals above personal pride. Whenever disagreements threatened to divide the delegates, he gently reminded them that no individual would achieve everything he wanted. If they hoped to build something that would outlive them, each man would have to surrender a little in order to preserve the whole. When the Declaration of Independence was finally prepared, Benjamin joined the other delegates in approving one of the most remarkable political documents ever written. He understood the gravity of that moment better than most. Placing his name beneath those words meant risking his property, his reputation, and possibly his life. Should the revolution fail, the signatures upon that document would almost certainly become evidence of treason. There would be no easy path back to ordinary life. Legend remembers one quiet remark, often associated with that day. As the delegates prepared to sign, Benjamin observed that they must all hang together, or they would surely hang separately. Beneath the humor rested a profound truth. Once the decision had been made, there could be no retreat into individual safety. Their futures had become inseparable. Success would belong to all of them together. Failure would do the same. The colonies soon found themselves facing the greatest military power of the age. British armies possessed experienced officers, disciplined soldiers, powerful ships, and resources that seemed almost limitless. Compared with such strength, the American cause appeared fragile. Weapons were scarce. Supplies often ran dangerously low. Many soldiers lacked proper clothing, food, and even shoes during harsh winters. From a distance, the outcome seemed almost predetermined. Yet revolutions are sustained by more than armies alone. They also depend upon hope, diplomacy, and the ability to persuade others that an impossible dream deserves support. Once again, Benjamin found himself asked to perform a task unlike any he had faced before. He was chosen to travel to France, seeking assistance from a nation whose support might determine whether the revolution survived or collapsed. The voyage carried him across the Atlantic once more, but this journey differed from every previous crossing. Years earlier, he had sailed toward London as an unknown apprentice searching for work. Now he traveled as the representative of a struggling nation that officially did not yet exist in the eyes of much of the world. Upon his shoulders rested expectations extending far beyond his own ambitions. Millions of lives would eventually be influenced by conversations that had not yet begun. France welcomed him with extraordinary curiosity. Long before his arrival, his scientific discoveries and published writings had made him one of the best-known Americans in Europe. Philosophers admired his intellect. Scientists respected his experiments. Ordinary citizens found his simple appearance strangely refreshing, compared with the elaborate fashions of aristocratic society, rather than dressing with excessive luxury. Benjamin often appeared in plain clothing that reflected the practical image of the American colonies. Whether intentional or not, that image became remarkably powerful. French society saw in him something almost symbolic. He represented wisdom without arrogance, learning without privilege, and simplicity without weakness. Portraits of Benjamin appeared in homes, shops, and salons. Conversations about the American struggle spread rapidly among intellectual circles. People who had never visited America began speaking about liberty, self-government, and the possibility that an entirely new political experiment might succeed across the ocean. Behind the admiration, however, lay difficult negotiations. Sympathy alone could not finance a war. France needed convincing that supporting the colonies served its own interests as well. Benjamin approached these discussions with the patience he had cultivated throughout his entire life. He understood that persuasion rarely depended upon speaking the loudest. More often it depended upon listening carefully, choosing words thoughtfully, and allowing trust to grow gradually over time. Day after day, meeting after meeting, he built relationships with ministers, diplomats, military leaders, and members of the royal court. He knew when to speak with confidence and when silence carried greater weight than argument. Years spent publishing newspapers, conducting scientific experiments, and solving practical problems had taught him that lasting influence rarely arrived through force. It emerged through credibility earned over many years. At last, the effort produced results that transformed the course of history. France agreed to provide financial assistance, military supplies, naval support, and eventually armed forces to aid the American cause. The alliance shifted the balance of power in ways few people could have imagined only months earlier. What had once appeared to be an isolated colonial rebellion now became part of a much larger international struggle. Standing far from the streets where he had once wandered with loaves of bread tucked beneath his arms, Benjamin must have reflected upon the extraordinary path his life had taken. The curious boy who borrowed books because he could not afford to buy them was now helping shape negotiations between kingdoms. Yet beneath every title and every honor, he remained guided by the same quiet habit that had followed him since childhood. Whenever the world presented another difficult question, he refused to stop searching until a better answer appeared. The alliance with France marked far more than a diplomatic victory. It gave exhausted soldiers renewed hope and convinced many observers that the American struggle might actually succeed. Until then, independence had often seemed like a distant dream, sustained by determination alone. Now, that dream possessed powerful allies, experienced fleets, and resources that could challenge one of the strongest empires on earth. Benjamin understood that history rarely changes because of a single battle. Sometimes it changes because trust is patiently built across thousands of conversations. Although he spent much of his time attending formal meetings, banquets, and negotiations, his greatest strength often appeared in moments that never entered official records. He possessed an unusual ability to make people feel respected regardless of their position. Whether speaking with kings, philosophers, merchants, or servants, he listened carefully before offering his own thoughts. This quiet habit created something no political strategy alone could achieve. It created confidence. People believed him because they sensed that he was interested not merely in winning arguments, but in understanding those sitting across the table. His reputation continued spreading throughout France. Scientists admired the man who had revealed the electrical nature of lightning. Writers praised the clarity of his language. Ordinary citizens admired the simplicity of his character. In a society where appearances often reflected social rank, Benjamin's modest clothing and calm manner seemed almost revolutionary. He did not attempt to imitate European aristocrats. Instead, he represented the image of an ordinary American whose wisdom had been earned through work rather than inheritance. That image became unexpectedly powerful. Many French citizens began viewing the American colonies through Benjamin himself. If this thoughtful, disciplined, and practical man represented the spirit of the new nation, perhaps the cause of independence deserved genuine support. Sometimes, a single human being can become a symbol larger than himself. Without seeking such a role, Benjamin gradually became the living face of American possibility throughout much of Europe. Years passed before the war finally approached its conclusion. Victories arrived slowly, often followed by setbacks that reminded everyone how uncertain the future remained. Families across the colonies continued sacrificing sons, husbands, fathers, and brothers. Farmers struggled to keep fields productive, while armies marched nearby. Merchants faced interrupted trade. No one experienced the cost of revolution without feeling its weight. Even those far from the battlefield carried invisible burdens of fear, loss, and waiting. When military success finally opened the door to peace negotiations, Benjamin again found himself performing work that required extraordinary patience. Winning a war and securing a lasting peace demanded entirely different skills. Weapons could force surrender, but only careful diplomacy could establish stable relationships for the years that followed. Anger still lingered on every side. Memories of hardship remained fresh. Creating peace required people willing to think beyond revenge. Together with other American representatives, Benjamin entered negotiations that would eventually produce the treaty recognizing the independence of the United States. Countless details demanded attention. Borders had to be determined, fishing rights discussed, financial obligations examined. Every sentence carried consequences, extending far beyond the room in which it was written. Experience taught Benjamin not to rush such work. Words placed carelessly upon paper could create conflicts lasting generations. When the treaty was finally completed, the achievement represented much more than political success. For Benjamin, it marked the conclusion of a journey that had begun decades earlier with a curious apprentice searching for books he could scarcely afford. The world had changed beyond anything that young printer could have imagined. colonies had become a nation. Impossible conversations had become historical agreements. Ordinary citizens had demonstrated that governments could arise not only through inherited power, but also through shared conviction. After returning home, many people assumed that a man approaching the final years of his life would choose comfort over responsibility. A few would have questioned such a decision. He had already earned international fame as a scientist, inventor, publisher, diplomat, and statesman. He possessed every reason to enjoy quiet days surrounded by family, books, and friends. Instead, he accepted yet another challenge that would shape the future long after his own lifetime had ended. The newly independent nation faced enormous uncertainty. Winning freedom had proven difficult. Governing wisely promised to be even harder. The former colonies differed in population, economy, geography, and political priorities. Without cooperation, independence itself might dissolve into endless disagreement. Once again, leaders from across the states gathered to confront questions with no easy answers. Once again, Benjamin took his place among them, despite advancing age and declining health. By this time, years of demanding work had left visible marks upon his body. Walking often required assistance. Painful illness limited his physical strength. Long meetings exhausted him more quickly than before, yet his mind remained remarkably clear. Wisdom accumulated over decades now became one of the convention's greatest resources. While younger delegates debated with passion, Benjamin frequently reminded them that lasting institutions required compromise more than personal victory. During one particularly tense period, disagreements threatened to divide the gathering. Strong personalities, during competing visions of government, each convinced that his own proposal offered the safest path forward. Frustration grew until progress nearly stopped altogether. Observing the atmosphere, Benjamin gently urged the delegates to remember the limits of individual certainty. No person, he suggested, possessed perfect understanding. Wisdom often began with the willingness to admit that one might still have something left to learn. His words carried unusual weight because they reflected the pattern of his own life. He had changed opinions when evidence demanded it. He had admitted mistakes without allowing them to define him. He had crossed oceans, questioned, accepted beliefs, and revised conclusions whenever experience revealed better answers. Humility did not weaken judgment. It strengthened it by leaving room for growth. The delegates listened because they recognized that these were not empty phrases. They came from a lifetime of practice. The constitution that eventually emerged from those difficult discussions represented countless compromises among people who often disagreed passionately. It was not perfect. Benjamin himself openly admitted that no human document could ever be completely free from flaws. Yet he also understood another truth. Waiting for perfection often prevents meaningful progress. A workable system, capable of improvement, could serve future generations better than endless arguments, chasing an impossible ideal. After signing the completed document, he reflected that he accepted it not because he believed it flawless, but because he doubted whether any gathering of imperfect human beings could produce something entirely without defect. Those quiet words revealed one of the deepest principles guiding his life. Progress belongs to those willing to improve what is possible rather than abandoning every effort, because perfection remains beyond reach. Outside the meeting hall, the nation continued growing. New settlements appeared farther west. Trade expanded. Schools, libraries, newspapers, and businesses multiplied across communities that only a generation earlier had struggled for survival. Many of these developments reflected ideas Benjamin had supported throughout his entire career. Education, public cooperation, scientific curiosity, and practical innovation slowly became part of the country's identity. His influence extended beyond official documents into the habits of everyday civic life. Yet perhaps the most remarkable aspect of his later years was that he never stopped asking questions. Despite worldwide recognition, he remained fascinated by simple observations. He continued reading, writing letters, discussing inventions, and exchanging ideas with younger thinkers. Fame had never convinced him that learning was complete. Every sunrise still offered another opportunity to notice something overlooked the day before. Looking back across the extraordinary path of his life, one pattern became impossible to ignore. Each chapter had prepared him for the next, without revealing where the journey would eventually lead. The crowded candle shop had taught discipline. Borrowed books had awakened curiosity. Disappointment in London had strengthened resilience. Years in the print shop had sharpened communication. Scientific experiments had cultivated careful observation. Diplomacy had refined patience. Together, those ordinary experiences created a man capable of helping shape the birth of a nation, while never forgetting that he had once been only a curious boy, searching for answers in the streets of Boston. As the years passed, Benjamin Franklin became something few people ever achieve during their own lifetime. He was no longer admired for a single accomplishment. Instead, he represented the rare combination of curiosity, practicality, wisdom, and service. Scientists respected his discoveries. Diplomats trusted his judgment. Writers admired his clarity. Ordinary citizens appreciated that he never seemed distant from the lives they lived each day. Despite international recognition, he continued to believe that the greatest ideas were often the simplest ones, provided they genuinely improved the lives of others. His home became a place where visitors from many nations gathered to exchange thoughts. Politicians sought advice before making important decisions. Young inventors arrived carrying strange devices and ambitious dreams. Scholars brought new books, scientific observations, and philosophical questions from across Europe. Benjamin welcomed these conversations with the same quiet enthusiasm that had once led a curious boy to borrow books whenever he could. Age had not diminished his desire to learn. If anything, it had made him even more aware of how much remained unknown. He often reflected upon the remarkable pace of change he had witnessed during his lifetime. When he was born, the colonies were small settlements scattered along the eastern coast of North America. Communication across great distances required patience measured in weeks or even months. Scientific knowledge remained limited, and many mysteries of nature inspired fear rather than investigation. Now an entirely new nation stood before the world, connected by ideas that spread faster than ever before. He had not merely observed history, he had helped shape it. Yet he rarely spoke about destiny or extraordinary talent. Instead, he pointed toward habits. Every meaningful achievement, he believed, rested upon thousands of ordinary choices repeated over many years. Waking early, reading consistently, honoring commitments, listening before speaking, questioning accepted beliefs, admitting mistakes, and treating every setback as another lesson rather than a final defeat. These practices appeared almost insignificant when viewed one day at a time. Over decades, however, they quietly transformed an ordinary life into an extraordinary one. Those who knew him personally noticed another quality that rarely appeared in public celebrations. Benjamin possessed a remarkable ability to laugh at himself. He understood that human beings were imperfect creatures, trying their best inside an imperfect world. Instead of pretending to possess flawless judgment, he freely admitted past errors whenever they offered useful lessons. This humility made his wisdom feel accessible rather than intimidating. People left conversations with him encouraged rather than diminished, because he never acted as though success had placed him above anyone else. His correspondence continued expanding throughout the world. Letters traveled across oceans, carrying discussions about electricity, public health, education, government, agriculture, navigation, and countless other subjects. He viewed every thoughtful exchange as an opportunity to refine his own understanding. Unlike those who defended opinions simply because they had expressed them publicly, Benjamin remained willing to change his mind whenever stronger evidence appeared. To him, intellectual growth required courage. It demanded the willingness to exchange certainty for deeper understanding. Among the causes that increasingly occupied his attention during his later years was the question of human freedom itself. Although his own views had evolved gradually over time, he eventually became one of the prominent voices opposing slavery. Experience had taught him that dignity should never depend upon birth, wealth, or inherited privilege. The principles used to justify American independence carried moral implications reaching far beyond political boundaries. If liberty possessed genuine value, then its meaning could not be limited only to a fortunate few. He understood that changing society required patience. Harmful traditions rarely disappeared overnight, especially when they benefited powerful interests. Yet he believed that every generation carried the responsibility to move a little closer toward justice than the generation before it. Progress did not always arrive through dramatic revolutions. Sometimes it advanced through persistent conversations, thoughtful writing, and quiet acts of conscience, repeated over many years. Even late in life, he refused to believe that meaningful improvement was impossible. Despite his extraordinary accomplishments, age gradually reminded him that every human journey has limits. Painful illnesses became more frequent. Simple movements demanded greater effort than they once had. Friends and colleagues who had shared decades of work slowly disappeared one by one, leaving behind memories that seemed both distant and immediate. The body weakened according to laws no invention could escape, yet those closest to him observed that his mind remained remarkably active. Whenever strength allowed, books still rested beside his chair, letters still covered his desk, and fresh questions still occupied his thoughts. Visitors sometimes expected to meet a legendary figure wrapped in solemn dignity. Instead, they encountered an elderly man whose curiosity remained delightfully ordinary. He enjoyed discussing practical inventions, neighborhood improvements, scientific puzzles, family stories, and humorous observations about everyday life. Fame had never separated him from the simple pleasures that had always nourished his spirit. Perhaps that explained why people felt comfortable in his presence. He carried greatness lightly, never allowing it to become a barrier between himself and others. Looking back across his long life, it became clear that no single moment explained his success. Not the kite experiment, not the Declaration of Independence, not the treaty with France, not the Constitution. Each achievement rested upon countless quieter moments that history seldom records. Evenings spent reading borrowed books, mornings correcting printing errors, conversations with neighbors, failures accepted without bitterness, disappointments transformed into opportunities for growth. The visible triumphs were only the surface of a much deeper story. There is something quietly comforting about that realization. We often imagine history as a sequence of dramatic events performed by extraordinary people unlike ourselves. Benjamin's life suggests something different. The qualities that shaped his legacy were practiced long before anyone recognized his name. Curiosity does not require fame. Discipline does not require wealth. Kindness does not require power. The habits capable of changing the world often begin inside completely ordinary days that appear unremarkable while they are happening. Perhaps that is why his story continues to resonate centuries later. Modern technology has transformed nearly every aspect of daily life, yet the questions he wrestled with remain surprisingly familiar. How should knowledge be shared? How can disagreement become productive instead of destructive? What responsibilities accompany success? How does a person continue learning after formal education ends? How can communities become stronger through cooperation rather than division? The tools have changed, but the human heart continues asking many of the same questions. His greatest invention may never have been a physical object at all. It may have been the example of a life devoted to continuous improvement. He demonstrated that education is not a destination reached during youth, but a companion carried throughout adulthood. He showed that wisdom grows through observation, humility, and experience more often than through titles or social status. Above all, he reminded future generations that ordinary beginnings never determine the limits of an extraordinary future. As the evening of his life slowly approached, Benjamin Franklin could look back without pretending that every decision had been perfect. He had made mistakes, changed opinions, faced criticism, and endured disappointment like every other human being. Yet through all those experiences, one quiet thread connected every chapter. He never stopped believing that tomorrow offered another chance to understand a little more than yesterday, and perhaps that enduring curiosity, more than any office he held or discovery he made, became the true legacy he left to the world. History has a curious way of simplifying remarkable lives. Over time, entire decades are often reduced to a handful of famous images. For Benjamin Franklin, many people remember the kite rising beneath dark clouds, the lightning rod standing above rooftops, or the signature placed beneath the Declaration of Independence. These moments deserve their place in history, yet they reveal only a small part of the man. Behind every celebrated achievement stood thousands of quiet mornings, filled with reading, writing, observing, questioning, and patiently improving himself long before the world noticed his name. Perhaps that is why his life continues to feel surprisingly modern. And he never believed that knowledge belonged only inside universities or government offices. He believed it belonged wherever people were willing to ask honest questions. A workshop could become a classroom. A newspaper could become a teacher. An ordinary conversation between thoughtful friends could become the beginning of an idea capable of changing society. Learning, to him, was not an event reserved for youth. It was a lifelong habit that quietly shaped every decision. Even in his later years, visitors often found him surrounded by papers, letters, books, and unfinished thoughts. Retirement, as many imagine it today, never truly appealed to him. His body grew weaker with age, but his curiosity refused to slow down. Each new scientific report arriving from Europe caught his attention. Every political development inspired fresh reflection. Every invention suggested another possibility waiting just beyond the horizon. The world remained endlessly unfinished, and that unfinished quality continued to fascinate him. He also understood something that many successful people discover only after decades of experience. Recognition itself is temporary. Applause fades. Newspapers become old paper. Monuments slowly weather beneath wind and rain. What truly survives is influence quietly carried forward through other people. A child encouraged to read because a library exists. A family protected because lightning follows a safer path into the earth. A citizen better informed because reliable information reaches the public. These invisible effects rarely appear in history books, yet they often become the most meaningful measure of a human life. Friends noticed that success had not removed his ability to enjoy simple pleasures. He delighted in thoughtful conversation, clever humor, and evenings spent exchanging ideas without ceremony. He never seemed interested in surrounding himself only with famous people. Craftsmen, merchants, travelers, students, scientists, and neighbors all found a willing listener. Perhaps he remembered too clearly what it felt like to be an unknown apprentice whose opinions few people cared to hear. Respect, once received, became something he freely offered to others. His writing reflected the same quality. Although capable of discussing philosophy and science with some of the greatest intellectuals of his age, he preferred language that ordinary readers could understand. Complicated ideas did not need complicated words. True understanding, he believed, often revealed itself through clarity rather than complexity. That approach allowed his thoughts to travel far beyond academic circles into homes, workshops, farms, and marketplaces throughout the colonies. Knowledge became practical because it remained accessible. There were moments, however, when quiet reflection replaced public activity. Age naturally invites comparison between youthful dreams and lived experience. Benjamin had crossed oceans more times than he could have imagined as a child. He had spoken with kings and common laborers, with philosophers and soldiers, with inventors and revolutionaries. He had witnessed triumphs that once seemed impossible, and disappointments that no careful planning could have prevented. Through every success and every failure, one lesson appeared again and again. Certainty is often far less valuable than curiosity. This belief shaped the advice he offered younger generations. Rather than encouraging blind confidence, he encouraged thoughtful observation. Before judging another person, understand their circumstances. Before defending an opinion, examine the evidence. Before rejecting a new idea, ask whether habit rather than reason might be guiding the decision. These principles did not promise perfect answers, but they greatly reduced unnecessary mistakes. Wisdom, he suggested, begins not with knowing everything, but with recognizing how much remains unknown. His attitude toward disagreement also deserves attention. Throughout his long career, he worked beside people whose beliefs differed dramatically from his own. Some became lifelong friends, while others remained determined opponents. Yet he rarely allowed disagreement to become personal hostility. Ideas could be challenged without diminishing human dignity. Conversations could remain respectful, even when conclusions differed sharply. In an age increasingly shaped by conflict, this quiet discipline became one of his greatest strengths. Modern readers sometimes imagine that extraordinary historical figures possessed endless confidence from childhood onward. Benjamin's life tells a gentler story. Confidence, for him, was not something he inherited. It was something slowly assembled through repeated effort. Every borrowed book added another piece. Every printing mistake corrected another weakness. Every failed expectation revealed another lesson. A confidence built in this way does not depend upon praise because it grows from experience. It survives criticism because it has already survived failure. Another remarkable quality defined nearly every stage of his journey. He remained willing to reinvent himself whenever life demanded change. The curious child became an apprentice. The apprentice became a printer. The printer became a publisher. The publisher became a scientist. The scientist became a diplomat. The diplomat became one of the founders of a nation. At no point did he allow earlier success to imprison future growth. Each chapter prepared him for responsibilities he could not yet imagine. Perhaps this willingness to evolve explains why his influence reached so many different fields. He never accepted the comforting illusion that identity must remain fixed forever. People often asked whether he considered himself a scientist, a writer, or a statesman. The question itself may have missed the point. Benjamin saw no reason why a curious human being should choose only one path when life offered countless opportunities to learn. Labels mattered less than usefulness. If knowledge from one discipline solved problems in another, then every subject belonged to the same larger search for understanding. As his final years unfolded, the nation he had helped create continued taking its first uncertain steps into the future. Challenges remained everywhere. Political disagreements persisted, economic hardships tested communities. Difficult moral questions awaited future generations. Benjamin understood that independence itself solved nothing automatically. Freedom simply created the opportunity to build something better. Whether that opportunity would be used wisely depended upon the character of the people who inherited it. Watching younger leaders assume greater responsibility, he seemed remarkably comfortable, allowing history to move forward without him standing at its center. Many individuals spend their final years protecting influence already earned. Benjamin appeared more interested in encouraging those who would continue the work after he was gone. Ideas, after all, are strongest when they no longer depend upon a single voice. The measure of a meaningful life is not how indispensable one becomes, but how many others are inspired to continue asking thoughtful questions after one's own voice falls silent. In many ways, the greatest monument to Benjamin Franklin was never carved from stone. It existed inside habits, quietly adopted by millions of ordinary people. The habit of reading beyond necessity. The habit of questioning accepted beliefs with respect rather than arrogance. The habit of improving communities through practical action instead of endless complaint. The habit of believing that knowledge should serve everyone rather than elevate only a fortunate few. These ideas required no grand ceremony to survive. They simply passed from one generation to the next, often unnoticed, quietly reshaping the future, one thoughtful life at a time. During the final chapter of his life, Benjamin Franklin carried himself with a quiet sense of peace that cannot be manufactured through wealth or public admiration. He had spent decades chasing questions instead of applause, and somehow the applause had found him anyway. Yet those closest to him often noticed that he seemed far more interested in tomorrow's ideas than yesterday's achievements. While others celebrated his past, his attention remained fixed on the future, wondering what kind of nation the United States might become long after his own voice had fallen silent. His home remained a place of constant conversation. Visitors arrived from every corner of the young republic and from distant countries across the Atlantic Ocean. Some came seeking political advice, others hoped to discuss scientific discoveries, while many simply wished to meet the man whose name had already become part of history. Benjamin welcomed them with the same warmth he had shown throughout his life. Titles rarely impressed him. Curiosity always did. A thoughtful question from an unknown student could interest him just as much as a formal discussion with an experienced statesman. Although advancing age limited his strength, it never diminished his habit of observation. He watched children playing in the streets of Philadelphia and wondered what kind of future they would inherit. Unlike the generation before them, these boys and girls would grow up knowing only one nation instead of scattered colonies. They would attend schools founded upon ideas that had seemed impossible only a few decades earlier. Libraries continued expanding. Newspapers reached more readers than ever before. Knowledge traveled faster, and opportunities slowly widened for people willing to prepare themselves. He often reflected upon how dramatically the meaning of education had changed during his lifetime. As a young boy, he had left school because his family simply could not afford to keep him there. At that moment, many people would have assumed his intellectual journey had ended before it truly began. Instead, he proved that learning belongs first to determination rather than institutions. Teachers can guide a student, but curiosity must come from within. Books can open doors, but only someone willing to walk through them discovers what lies beyond. Perhaps this belief explained why he devoted so much energy to creating opportunities that he himself had never enjoyed. Libraries, educational societies, public discussions, and institutions devoted to practical learning all reflected the same quiet philosophy. No child should abandon the search for knowledge, simply because circumstances made formal education impossible. Society became stronger whenever ordinary people possessed the tools to improve themselves. Wisdom multiplied when it was shared rather than guarded. His thoughts also turned increasingly toward the unfinished work facing future generations. Independence had been achieved, but justice required continual effort. Government had been established, but good government demanded responsible citizens. Scientific discoveries had revealed new possibilities, yet every answer uncovered additional mysteries waiting to be explored. Benjamin never imagined that any generation would complete humanity's work. Each generation merely carried the responsibility of leaving the world slightly wiser than it had found it. There was remarkable humility in that perspective. Despite helping shape the birth of a nation, he never claimed to possess final answers for every problem. Instead, he trusted future generations to continue asking better questions. Perhaps they would improve laws where his generation had fallen short. Perhaps they would make discoveries beyond anything he could imagine. Perhaps they would correct mistakes that seemed invisible to people living in the 18th century. Progress depended upon this willingness to continue learning rather than endlessly celebrating past accomplishments. His correspondence during these years reflected the same spirit. Letters flowed steadily between Philadelphia and cities throughout Europe, carrying discussions about science, philosophy, medicine, agriculture, economics, and public affairs. Even while illness increasingly confined him indoors, his mind continued traveling across oceans through words. Every exchange reminded him that knowledge recognized no national borders. Truth belonged to everyone willing to search honestly for it. The pain gradually became a familiar companion. Breathing often required tremendous effort, and simple movements exhausted him more quickly than before. Physicians did what they could with the limited understanding available at the time. But age follows its own quiet laws. Friends noticed that physical suffering never entirely overshadowed his natural optimism. There were difficult days, certainly, yet he retained the ability to smile, to joke gently, and to find comfort in meaningful conversation. The body weakened, but the spirit remained remarkably resilient. Those who visited him during these final years often expected solemn reflections upon death. Instead, they frequently encountered discussions about life. He spoke about experiments that still fascinated him, improvements that cities might one day adopt, books worth reading, and young people whose talents deserved encouragement. It was as though curiosity itself refused to recognize that time was running short. Every sunrise continued, offering another opportunity to think, to learn, or simply to appreciate the astonishing complexity of the world. Perhaps that enduring sense of wonder explains why Benjamin Franklin remains more than a historical figure. He feels strangely familiar, even across centuries. Modern readers recognize the restless child who kept asking why. They recognize the young apprentice struggling to find his place. They recognize the adult who learned that failure often teaches more than success. Above all, they recognize the lifelong student who never believed that wisdom belonged exclusively to the famous, the wealthy, or the powerful. His story gently challenges one of the oldest assumptions about greatness. We often imagine that extraordinary people possess extraordinary beginnings. Benjamin's life suggests something entirely different. Remarkable futures can emerge from remarkably ordinary circumstances. A crowded household, limited education, difficult work, financial uncertainty, disappointment, and repeated setbacks did not prevent his achievements. In many ways, those experiences shape the qualities that later define them. Resilience is rarely inherited. It is built one difficult day at a time. When people speak about his inventions, they often focus upon the objects themselves. The lightning rod, the bifocal glasses, the improved stove, and countless practical innovations deserve admiration. Yet perhaps the greater invention was invisible. Benjamin demonstrated a way of living rooted in continuous improvement. He treated every experience as raw material for growth. Every mistake became information. Every conversation became an education. Every challenge became an invitation to think more carefully instead of surrendering to frustration. That philosophy continues speaking across generations because it asks no one to become extraordinary overnight. It simply invites each person to remain curious a little longer, to observe a little more carefully, to listen a little more patiently, and to improve a little more faithfully than yesterday. History rarely changes because of dramatic moments alone. More often, it changes because ordinary people quietly repeat meaningful habits until those habits reshape both their own lives and the world around them. As the evening light slowly settled over the final years of Benjamin Franklin's remarkable journey, one truth seemed to shine more clearly than all the honors he had received. Greatness had never been his destination, understanding had been. Perhaps that is why his legacy continues to feel alive. The questions that guided his life were never completely answered. They were simply passed forward, waiting for another curious mind to notice something others had overlooked and to wonder, once again, why. On a quiet evening in the spring of 1790, after more than 8 decades filled with questions, discoveries, disappointments, triumphs, and service, Benjamin Franklin's remarkable journey finally came to its end. He was 84 years old. By then, his body had grown tired after years of illness, but his mind had remained active almost until his final days. The curious boy, who had once wandered through the muddy streets of Boston searching for answers, had lived long enough to watch a new nation take its first uncertain steps into history. News of his passing spread with remarkable speed. In Philadelphia, businesses closed their doors, church bells rang across the city, and thousands of ordinary citizens gathered to pay their respects. Merchants stood beside craftsmen, politicians stood beside laborers, scholars stood beside sailors. People from every background came together, not simply because a famous man had died, but because they believed they had lost someone who had genuinely devoted his life to improving the world around him. Respect of that kind cannot be demanded. It must be earned slowly, one action at a time. Across the Atlantic Ocean, newspapers in England and France also reported his death with unusual admiration. Governments that had once negotiated with him remembered his wisdom. Scientists honored the man whose experiments had forever changed the study of electricity. Philosophers reflected upon his writings, while readers who had never met him personally still felt connected through the books, essays, and letters he had left behind. Few individuals of his generation had earned such universal respect from people whose opinions often differed on nearly everything else. Yet if Benjamin Franklin could have witnessed the countless tributes offered after his death, he might have smiled quietly before turning the conversation elsewhere. Throughout his life, he had rarely measured success by fame. He cared far more about usefulness, a safer home protected from lightning, a public library filled with eager readers, a volunteer fire company saving families from disaster, a newspaper encouraging thoughtful discussion. These ordinary improvements mattered deeply because they touched lives that history would never record by name. His influence continued growing long after he was gone. Schools taught children about the value of curiosity. Inventors looked to his experiments as reminders that careful observation could reveal extraordinary truths hidden within ordinary nature. Diplomats studied his patience and ability to build trust across cultures. Writers admired his clear language, while entrepreneurs found inspiration in the discipline with which he built his business from almost nothing. Generation after generation discovered a different part of his story that spoke to the challenges of their own time. Perhaps the most remarkable aspect of his legacy is that it refuses to remain locked inside the 18th century. Technology has transformed the modern world beyond anything Benjamin could have imagined. People now communicate across continents within moments. Scientific discoveries continue expanding at astonishing speed. Nations rise, change, and confront challenges unknown to earlier centuries. Yet the qualities that guided his life remain surprisingly timeless. Curiosity still opens doors that fear keeps closed. Integrity still builds trust more slowly than wealth, yet lasts far longer. Learning still belongs to anyone willing to pursue it with patience and humility. His life also reminds us that greatness is rarely dramatic while it is unfolding. When we look backward through history, everything appears connected by purpose, as though destiny had carefully arranged each event from the beginning. Reality feels very different while living it. Benjamin never knew which conversation would change his future, which disappointment would become his greatest lesson, or which simple question would eventually reshape science. He moved forward one ordinary day at a time, making the best decisions he could with the knowledge available at that moment. There is quiet comfort in that truth. Most people never perform famous experiments or negotiate historic treaties. Most never sign documents that alter the course of nations. Yet every meaningful life still consists of the same simple materials that shaped Benjamin's journey. Curiosity instead of indifference. Honesty instead of convenience. Patience instead of haste. Discipline instead of excuses. Kindness instead of pride. These choices rarely attract immediate attention, but over years, they quietly shape both character and destiny. If his story teaches anything, it is not that everyone is destined to become world famous. Rather, it suggests that every person possesses the ability to keep growing, regardless of where life begins. The son of a candle maker, whose formal education ended almost before it had started, became one of the most respected thinkers of his age, not because opportunity constantly favored him, but because he refused to stop learning whenever opportunity disappeared. Each setback became another lesson. Each unanswered question became another invitation to explore. Perhaps that is why Benjamin Franklin continues to stand among history's greatest people, not because he lived without flaws. He certainly did not. Not because every decision proved correct. Many did not. He remains unforgettable because he demonstrated that wisdom is not a destination reached by a fortunate few. It is a lifelong journey built through observation, reflection, courage, and the willingness to improve little by little, even when no one is watching. The world he left behind continued changing in ways he could never fully foresee. Inventions multiplied. Democracies expanded. Scientific understanding reached unimaginable heights. New generations faced challenges different from those of the 18th century. Yet they continued asking questions that would have sounded familiar to the young apprentice reading borrowed books late into the night. How can knowledge improve human life? How should freedom be protected? What responsibilities accompany opportunity? How does one leave the world better than it was found? Those questions remain unanswered because every generation must answer them again for itself. Perhaps somewhere, at this very moment, another curious child is sitting beside a window with an old book, wondering why the world works as it does. Perhaps that child comes from a family with limited means. Perhaps no one expects remarkable things from them. Perhaps they will make mistakes, face disappointments, and walk uncertain roads before discovering their purpose. History has shown us many times that greatness rarely announces its arrival. It often begins quietly, hidden inside an ordinary mind that simply refuses to stop asking questions. And maybe that is the most enduring legacy Benjamin Franklin left behind. Not a lightning rod reaching toward the sky. Not a famous signature beneath an extraordinary document. Not even the countless honors awarded to him during his lifetime. His greatest gift was the reminder that the human mind, when guided by curiosity, humility, discipline, and compassion, possesses an almost limitless ability to illuminate the darkness around it. Long after the candles he once helped create had burned away, the light he ignited through knowledge continues to shine. The story of Benjamin Franklin may have reached its final page, but the questions that shaped his life still wait patiently for every new generation to answer. And perhaps, somewhere in those questions, another extraordinary journey is already beginning.